And I'd like to welcome everyone to the October Entuity Tech Talk. We've created these sessions especially for you, our Entuity and BMC Entuity Network Management users. We hope you're finding them useful. Don't forget that all of the Tech Talks are always available via video on the resources page at entuity.com for your reference. Please note that this is the second of 3 Tech Talks devoted to the new event management system, which was included in Entuity 13.5. Its counterpart in the BMC world, which is ENMA 10.5. I'm John Diamond, and I'm a Principal Solutions Architect at Entuity. And also with me today is my colleague, Paresh Mistry, who is a Field Systems Engineer and will be your host for the next 20 or 30 minutes or so. Today's Tech Talk session is the second of 3, all focusing on the new event management system, which was released in Entuity 13.5. It's such an important function within Entuity Network Management that to fully explain it, we need more than one Tech Talk. Let's begin our session. I want to just give a quick overview of the event management system so that before Paresh takes the reins and gives you a worked example, you can actually have some framework in which to fit the discussion. Within the system, the event management system can be configured by a suitably authorized user, typically an administrator. One thing before I go any further is to point out that in the out-of-the-box configuration that you get when you first install or upgrade, the event system is fully usable and can be used without any further configuration. The way the system works, there are a multitude of events that are raised within Entuity. They're raised from various different technologies, and each event tells you that something has happened to a particular component that it identifies. It tells you what it is that's happened and gives you some textual details about that. It tells you the severity level that we've assigned to it and the date and time that it happened. However, that doesn't tell you what the state of that component is right now. It just tells you that something happened at a particular point in history. We've now introduced a secondary concept. That is the concept of an incident. Incidents are raised, updated, and closed based on the processing of events. So an incident will tell you whether a particular situation is still ongoing or whether it has been cleared. When events are generated, we now have the ability, and this is a fully customizable ability, and this is what we're going to be discussing today, of processing those events in real time, very rapidly, and either passing them through to be stored in the database, optionally forwarded out to a third-party handler such as BPPM, and then optionally processed yet again before being passed on to the incident processing system that will raise, update, and clear incidents based upon settings within the incident manager. At any point within this train of processing, events can be fed back into the beginning. So what can happen is that new events can be raised or events can be modified, fed back into the beginning. Very powerful concept when it comes to event processing. That said, I'm now going to pass the reins over to Paresh, who's going to take you through some examples that'll show how typical things that will be required in the field can be implemented without having to have new features in the product. All you're doing is configuring the event management system.
Hi all. So as John said, I'm going to be taking you through some use cases today that have actually come from the field themselves, so maybe even a customer on the call today. So there's 2 use cases that I will be following, as you can see on the presentation slide in front of you today. So the idea behind the event management system is, as John has said, is to take you and to enrich the incidents within the system to kind of help you further with reducing mean time to repair and improving workflow. That said, I must emphasize that out of the box, we've got a pretty good event management system as is, without you having to really do anything further. But this area of this functionality of event management that we've brought in 13.5 really does take it to the next step, and a lot of people in Entuity, including a lot of the sales engineers like myself, are quite excited at what additional functionality it can provide you. So that being said, the demonstration I'll be showing you on these two use cases based on Entuity 13.5 or BMC ENMA 10.5 with the latest patches. So patch 01 it needs to be installed as well to ensure proper functionality. So let's start off with the first use case here, which is to look at thresholds with compound criteria. So this is a scenario where you get processor utilization high, which is a standard minor event within our event stream by default, which is useful. So each time that threshold is breached, you get an incident. What we're planning to do here with this use case is use the event management system to say, actually, let's not get the original incident in until it stays in the open condition for 20 minutes to kind of take care of any spikes maybe. And then furthermore, we're going to enrich the incident further to say that actually if after 60 minutes or longer it's not, it's still open, well then actually let's change the severity to be critical, and that's key. That's something that the event management system can do. So I bring down the presentation there and bring up my demo version of Entuity. You see here that I've gone into the threshold settings just to show you that by default we just have the one event for processor utilization default set to 80. So as I said, every time you breach that threshold, you'll get an alarm. So to meet this particular use case, we need to kind of break it up into two stages. The first is, so let's first go to the event administration. So we're at the event administration, currently running October 17th, 10 version 5. So the first stage would be to actually find a way of holding off an event coming in, which then turns into an incident for the first 20 minutes. So to do that, we need to create a rule. If I click on rules, you see the pre-storage and post-storage that John explained nicely before passing over to me. I'm going to go into a pre-storage, and one of the areas that we already have built into the product is N of M. So that's a processing staging area, and within there we have a number of out-of-the-box N of M rules already configured for you, which are by default disabled, but you can enable them. So what I'm going to do there is actually use the N of M rule to create a new rule. So I'll right-click, add rule, and we want to make this N of M, suppression. And I want to give it a name. Press to keep N of M to hold off processor util for 20 mins. So that's what we're doing. We want to hold off any events of this type. I'm just going to copy that and paste that also into description. I'm going to leave the condition as none. And now the release condition of when we release that is to say, actually, we want it to be in 100% for the last, change it to minutes. Now here I would put 20 minutes in the real world, but in a tech talk world where we have 30 minutes or so to talk, I'm going to drop that down to 1 minute. So we're going to say if the event, which I'm now going to introduce into this rule, which is the processor high rule. Too high up. Okay, processor high. And then I also need to bring in the closed by, which again is the clearing event to do with the same event. Go up a bit more. See all those 5 500 or so events that we have in the system. But, where are you? It's nearly there. There we go. Okay. Just to recap, we're saying it's got to stay in this condition for 1 minute before we release that event, and we do OK. So that's the first part, to hold off, and you can see that the project is now, you get this red at the top to say that you've made a change to the event management system that needs to be deployed and saved. We'll wait off until we've done the second part, and for the second part we need to go to the incident itself. So we go into incidents, and again we go down to the processor util high. There we are. And here we then now need to add a trigger. So we're going to edit it. We've got the processor util high, information there, and we go to triggers. Now there's no triggers at the moment, so I'm going to add a trigger. I'm going to give the trigger a name. Just say, let's go processor high 60 mins. That's what we're going to do. Okay, I'll put that into the description just to save time. And this is after transition, so we need it to be opened or reopened in this state. So if the alarm's come back, it has come back in again in that time period. We know about it, but we want the precondition state to be open. And again, in terms of delay, we want to save this to be 60 minutes. So again, to do it within Tech Talk time, I'll make that 6 minutes. So in the real world, we'll make it 60 minutes. And so that trigger will kick off after 6 minutes, and we need it to give it an action. So I'll click on Add Steps here, and I'm going to, again, I can increase and decrease severity. There's different things I can do. For this particular one, I want to set the severity to go to, let's go to critical. Okay, so that's set, and then that's okayed, and we okay the incident trigger. That's all done, and you can see a tick has appeared under the T. So T stands for triggers, so we know there's a trigger associated with that particular incident. So both those things I've changed now. I need to save this project. So let's save and deploy, and I'll just keep the same name and just say processor util I can spell enhance. Okay, so that's the new project. I'm going to save and deploy, and that's going to go out now and deploy that additional configuration into the event management system. There we go. Let's come back. There's no errors there. Perfect. So now if I go to the event system here, I've got it as a different tab. I want to send a fake event in from an event generator for BeachNet for that particular processor utilization. I'm doing that right now. And look, nothing's come in. I'll just click on events here to prove it. So proves to me that that initial hold off for 1 minute has happened. And we'll come back to that as I go through the tech talk to see the events coming in. So that's an example of the first use case. So just to revisit that, we've told it to hold off for 1 minute and then change severity to critical after 6 minutes. Now let's move on to the second one. The second one is again, came from one of your customers who wanted to kind of use the event stream to start launching into an internal help desk system, and also could be used to launch a third external URL as well. So the example I'm going to go through today is to take the quas Q drop bitrate high. That's one of our quas events, and to turn that incident, or enrich that incident, should I say, to actually include a hyperlink URL attribute. And so when that incident comes in, you'll be able to click on the URL, and that will take you to a quad configuration guide within the same workflow. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now. So before I move on there, you can see that the first hold off has now come in from the original use case, which is great. So that first bit's working, and hopefully in the next 5 minutes or so we should see that turn to red, and that's a key part of the use case that we're going through. So back to this one. So to do this, I need to find the incident quas Q length Q drop bit height. That's the event I want to create the URL link for. And so I again edit that like we did before. Again, go to triggers, and again there's no triggers there, so we'll add in a new trigger. So here we're going to again give it a name. So let's give it a set URL for quas config, and let's keep the description the same as well. After transaction, here we want any changes, or we want this hyperlink to appear on any of the events that has that the quas Q bit drop rate. So we want to do any change here, and we want it to appear immediately. So unlike the previous one, we don't want any delays in here, and we want to be an open event. So that's all done. So again, we add an action step here. And this time we're actually going to set an attribute. So as I said, going back to the different things we can do, standard actions, we want to set attributes, and I want to give it a new attribute name. I want to call it documentation for now. The name in the attribute has to be one name, can't have any spaces in there. Important to note here, very key, because I often miss it myself, is you do need to put the description in here, because it's a description that is actually displayed as the title for this attribute. And in here you can actually put spaces. I'll just leave it at the same for now though, and then I'll click OK. Okay. That's created the attribute, and what do I want the attribute to be? I want it to be a hyperlink. So this is where I just need to do a bit of HTML coding. And of course, if you don't know how to do this, this example will be recorded and you can utilize it. But it's a simple use of the A tag to define the hyperlink, and then the href attribute which specifies the URL or page link that you want to go to. So it's just speech marks A, and then href equals single quotes, and then I've already got at the top the URL that I want that link to go to. So this is the configuration of the modular quas. So I want to take that hyperlink there. I want to do that, and I want to put that URL into core here, and then at the end I'm going to close off that hyperlink, and then I also want to add in target equals single quotes underscore blank. Now this is important, as this will enable you to open this when the hyperlink is clicked. It will actually open it up in a new window. If this isn't put, then you'll actually open it up within the Entuity GUI page. So it's not the ideal workflow. So ideally, it's best to put in the target equals single quote underscore blank close quotes. And the final thing we want to do is then give it a name of where it's the hyperlink name that you'll see within the attribute. So I'm going to put here, go to Cisco Quaz doc. Okay, and then we'll just finish off with the A. Okay, so that's all done, and we click on OK. So just to recap, we've set a new trigger with a new attribute called documentation that will provide a hyperlink to take me to that doc, and I'll click on OK there, and I'll click on OK there. So again, we need to save the project. So to save the project, I will go to Save and Deploy, and let's just change this now to be added Quaz hyperlink. Okay, and OK. So that should go out and deploy that. That's still coming up, so it's not really got to see. Oh, there we go. Just as I was talking about it, it actually turned red. So this is going back to the first use case, and you can see, importantly, that the severity has changed to critical, as we said. So after 6 minutes, it's gone to critical. So that's it's great to see that happening. And we'll move back to this current use case where I now need to just do an F5, make sure I refresh that page. Okay, and go to events. We'll look at all of the events. So what I'm going to do now is go to that. I'm going to create another fake alarm for that new Quaz queue. So before I do that, I need to right click and do configure columns. There's one thing that's missing at the moment is the ability to, bear with me. Hey, I'm expecting to see the term documentation there. Let me just refresh again, just in case. The wonders of a live demo. Okay, so let's right click. And it's still not showing up. Okay, so what I'm going to do, not sure what's happened there, so what I'm going to do is just go back to the, I'm going to go back to the event administration, and let's just quickly change that Quaz rule here. Oh, I know why.
If you actually look down the bottom there, what you're going to see is that it's an invalid expression. In fact, this is a good example, Paresh, that you've put up of what happens in the event of a syntactical error on the part of the administrator. You'll notice there isn't a quote at the end of that string, and that's what I'm warning you. Exactly. So I jumped the gun and said that deployed successfully, because it had earlier on today 2 or 3 times. But so that's exactly the reason why here. So we need to go back to edit that trigger. I can go to edit, and it's a good use case. As I said, it's quite easy to make a simple typo, but we tell you what's wrong with it. I edit that now. At the end there, I need to close off with double quotes. And then OK. And then OK again. OK again. And then let's save and deploy that again. Version 2. This time I'll wait here until it actually deploys without jumping the gun like I did last time.
doesn't look like there's any message log there. Okay, so if I go back to the event stream now and right click on the column. Oh, don't see that. Let's do an F5. There we are. Just need to do an F5 to refresh. So excuse that last minute or two. So I made a mistake within the hyperlink, which is great. It shows that it didn't deploy, and there was an error message that we're able to detect there. I remedied that. I just needed to refresh my screen now to see the documentation attribute that I had created. I now need to add that to the left-hand side and maybe move it up 2 places to after details. If I do that, you should see a new screen appear here. If I now go to the London BeachNet device, let's go to London device, BeachNet, and then I'm just going to trigger off the POS alarm, and that should come in. There you go, so it's come in, quad queue, drop bitrate is high, and now we've got this additional attribute called documentation, and I've got the ability to now go to the hyperlink and go straight to the documentation that we set it to go to. So you can see how that can be useful within your environment, or utilised in different ways, maybe not documentation, maybe a third-party URL product or whatever you would like it to be. So they're the 2 use cases that we've gone through today. Just on the first one, the setting thresholds with compound, that's one way. One of the other areas that you may that we've come across in that type of scenario is where you have a device that's going in and out of a particular threshold. So it's breaking a threshold, then going back under threshold, breaking a threshold, going under threshold. That's kind of classed as a kind of a flapping rule within the Entuity EMS. And what I've done here, just an example, which is currently not enabled, just to show you, is that you can using the high processor utilization event is rather than saying if it stays in a certain state for a certain period of time, then hold off and then send an alarm or increase the severity. You can say using flapping detection to say if it happens 3 times within the last 12 hours, derive a new event. So a new event called multiple high processor util will come in if this processor utilization high comes in and out and comes in and out and comes in and out. So that's just another slight deviation on the first use case. So with that, and again, just to say this is great in terms of enhancing your event management system, but it's also worth reiterating that out of the box, a lot of our customers are happy with the event stream and the intelligence we have out of the box as well. So with that, I'll hand over to Pat and John to see if there's any further questions that come in.
Yeah, we have one, and it is if you're supporting multiple Entuity instances, can we import event management rules to all instances?
Okay, now the way this works at the moment in 13.5 is that if you've got multiple servers that you want to keep in synchronism with each other as far as their event management configuration, the good news is that all of the configuration for the event management system is held in a project. If you just noted with what Aparish was deploying, he was making configuration changes, and once those changes were finished, he then deployed the project. Any of those projects that have been deployed, and by the way, they're kept in an archive, a version-controlled archive on the system, can also be exported as an XML file. And that file contains the entire settings that comprise that project. That file can then just be copied over to the other system and re-imported. And in fact, the way that would work is that when you export the file, what you're doing is exporting it to your local PC within the browser, typically within the downloads folder of the file system. And you would export the configuration. That would allow you to see it in the browser, and then you would log into another server and simply say import that configuration, select it from that same folder, and then that would be imported into the other server. So there's a manual step involved, but what it does mean is that you do not need to re-enter all of the individual configuration items. The entire configuration is kept as one file, and so it is very straightforward from a browser to then redeploy it out, the very same configuration out onto one or more other servers.
Okay, thank you, JD. There's another question. Can you add dynamic content to attribute values? For example, host name of device that is triggered as part of the URL?
Absolutely. The example that Paresh has just shown there was adding an attribute onto an incident. And he used a static string. That string contained the hyperlink. There was nothing dynamic about the way that that was derived. And by the way, if you want to do the same thing for an event rather than an incident and add an extra attribute onto an event, you can do that from a rule. With an event, you use a rule. With an incident, you use the trigger. Same mechanism applies. When it comes to putting dynamic content in, you're going to take advantage of the fact that you can use Groovy scripting syntax. And where that string was entered, if you remember, it was contained within double quotes. That's because you were actually specifying that in Groovy language. That's how you specify a string in Groovy. What you can also do is use Groovy to delve into the hierarchy of the data structure within the data store and pull out what you need in the context of incident in question. And there's a good example of that in one of the videos which is provided with the system. In fact, at the moment, Paresh, if you'd like to just point to where we can get at the tutorial videos, you'll see right in the middle of the screen on the left there's a link that says tutorial videos. And that takes you to another page. And there you'll see that right down the bottom, there's a video about enrichment. And that's what adding an extra attribute is all about. And that contains an example of where we pulled the device location for a device that was generating an incident. So that's a dynamic population of the attribute, and it's all illustrated within there. If you need help with the syntax of doing that, just drop our support team a line.
And then one last question. How is custom trap handling achieved?
Now that's a good topic. And it introduces a couple of items. First of all, if you have traps coming in from devices, enterprise traps that aren't covered by the standard configuration of Entuity, you can import and parse a MIB that describes those traps. So if you provide a MIB and any dependent MIBs that go with it, you can use a utility called parse MIBs that is provided with the product and fully documented. That will enable you to parse in extra trap information, and you can also tell it to generate events for either all or some of those traps. So that will generate the event. However, when you're looking at the incident viewer, you're looking at incidents, not events. When you parse in a trap MIB, it does not generate incident definition for each and every one of those traps. So you'll have traps that are listed, trap events listed in the list of events. If you look in the Event Management System configuration and click on events, you'll see the list of traps, but you won't see any incident definitions attached to them. And in fact, on the very right-hand column there, if you see a trap then you'll see on the right-hand side that it's got 0 incidents associated with it. So you would expect that means it's not going to generate an incident. However, there is a default behavior built in, and that says that if there are no incidents associated with an event, it need not be a trap, it could be any form of event, but if there's an event that doesn't have an incident associated with it, then provided it is generated at a severity level greater than 1 or green, you'll notice those are defaulting to green, all traps default to green lowest severity level, so you'll need to raise their severity if this is going to generate an incident. Provided it's greater than green, then it will automatically generate an incident, even though there isn't a rule. That incident will have exactly the same name as the event, the same severity, same details, the same source, and you will see it in the incident viewer. It will have default timeout and expiry settings, and if you want those defaults changed, then that can be done from within the configuration file. There are details of that in the documentation. Again, if you need help, let our support team know. One quick note, if you set the timeout and expiry to be 0, then at the moment that will inhibit the generation of these events, even if they are greater than severity level. Just be aware of that.
Okay, JD, we have one additional question.
Okay.
If you use BMC's BPPM, how much event management modifications, if any, are required to continue to receive events as was in previous versions of Entuity?
The answer is absolutely 0. The events will still be passed through the integration up into BPPM, and they will be handled just as before. Just make sure, as Parish said at the beginning of the chat, that you've got patch 1 installed. There was an issue with the BPPM integration that is resolved in patch 1. But if you upgrade to the new version and you have patch 1 installed, then all of the events will continue to be forwarded through to BPPM. By the way, a little note about that. We're talking about events. If you wanted to send additional events when an incident was raised, bear in mind incidents are raised by events. But if you wanted to create a new type of event and send it out when an incident was raised, or possibly when an incident was closed as well, then you could take advantage of that trigger mechanism that Parish showed you earlier. And one of the actions there, instead of setting an attribute, is to create a new event. And so that whole mechanism there could be used to add an extra event into the system. That event would get forwarded along with everything else. So, simple answer, no changes needed. You'll get all of your events into BPPM, but you can go beyond and take advantage of the configuration capability within the event management system to get fine-grained control over what events get generated when, for what purpose.
That's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Pat. And to wrap up, as is customary, we will send you a summary of today's Tech Talk in video format for your future use. If you have any further questions or have suggestions for future Tech Talks, and that's a real request, please let us know if there are topics you would like us to cover. Don't hesitate to contact us using the email that is on the screen at the moment. The special one for this purpose is tech.talks, that's Entuity.com. We hope to see you on November the 6th for the next Tech Talk. Have a great day. Thank you very much for attending.